Good morning. Welcome to the Unitarian Universalist Church of Birmingham. Whoever you are, whomever you love, wherever you are today, and wherever you are on your spiritual journey, you are welcome here. To all who labor, and to all who rest from labor, today we honor your contributions to society. To all who are here this morning, welcome home.
If you would like to participate or comment on our service, especially during the sharing of joys and sorrows, please use the chat feature on YouTube. You can also send virtual hugs and waves to one another by putting parentheses around someone's name. Please join us after the service in our Zoom room for coffee time, small groups, and other meetings. Elizabeth Vanderkemp is hosting a Zentangle gathering this Saturday at noon. Gather with Elizabeth to learn more about this meditative art form. Contact the church office for details, and the church contact number and email will be in the chat feature. Our congregational meeting is next Sunday, September 13th, immediately following the service. Please check your email for your congregational meeting packet. We are voting on a slate of officers, our church budget, our church covenant, and 2 proposals offered by the Justice Committee. If you'd like a paper packet, contact the church office. Only church members who have signed the book are eligible to vote in the congregational meeting. So if you've been with us, know you want to stay with us, and want to vote, please contact Reverend Julie as soon as possible. Now, please take a moment to hear a message by our Share the Plate recipient.
Hi, we are filming from the Panic office. This is Nina Morgan speaking from the background, helping Mr. Powell film. I am a climate and environmental organizer for GASP, and we are here today so Mr. Powell can tell you a little bit about himself, a little bit about Panic and the work that Panic does, and how a Share the Plate donation would be of assistance to reaching the Panic goals. So Mr. Powell, if you could kick this off by introducing yourself, and we'll go from there.
My name is Charlie Powell. I am the founder and the president of Panic. We've been working in the North Birmingham area since 2012. We're a 501c3 nonprofit organization, and I want to brief you up with some of the work we've done. We got the city council to put us on the NPL, to make recommendation to put us on the NPL, and the mayor, and Senator Doug Jones, and the only somebody that's stopping us now is the mayor. The governor. We did a caravan around the governor office and stuff on the 27th this month, which was Thursday. We're planning to have another one, and your donation would be very helpful to us for office supplies. As you can see, we got a new computer and a printer, and my organization, as I said, is Panic, Peoples Against Neighborhood Industrial Contamination. And we work along with gas. We deal with the soil, and gas deal with the air, putting monitors out there, and we having the soil testing. They doing a cleanup around there, but a cleanup is not enough. We are asking to be relocated. For the ones that want to be relocated, compensate the ones that want to stay. That has been my job around there for I'll say the last 8 years, and that's what we doing this thing. Then that's what this thing is all about, is promoting good health for the peoples out there. Good health and welfare. Your donation would be very helpful to us, and I thank you for that donation. And if I can be assist of you any kind of way, don't hesitate to call. My name is Charlie Powell. My phone number is 205-266-1987. If you want to send letters or any kind of contribution, the address is 110 74th Street South, zip code 35206. And
The prelude prepares us for worship. If you have a chalice at home, please light it now and type "Lighting my chalice" in the chat feature. In recognition of Labor Day, we light this flame to honor all work, including the work of our hands and our backs, in gratitude for all the laborers that support our world and for all those who boldly continue the work of justice, equity, and peace. In honor of Labor Day, please join together in this traditional hymn honoring the labor of all, as we hope for bread and roses.
As we come marching, marching in the beauty of the day, a million darkened kitchens, a thousand workshops gray, are touched with all the radiance that a sudden sun discloses. For the people hear us singing, bread and roses, bread and roses. As we come marching, marching, bringing battle to four men. For they are women's children, and we mother them again. Our life shall not be sweated from earth until life closes. Our starve as well as bodies. Give us bread, but give us roses. As we come marching, marching, unnumbered women dead, go crying throughout, singing their ancient song of bread. Small heart and love and
is supported by those who call our church home and by those who support our church's efforts to change our world for the better. We share our cash plate every Sunday with organizations whose work reflects UU values: to care for marginalized persons, advocate for real and systemic change, defend our environment, and promote justice and equity for all. This month's Share the Plate recipient is People Against Neighborhood Industrial Contamination, also known as PANIC, a group committed to the community affected by the 35th Avenue Superfund contamination site. All proceeds to PANIC will go towards funding a survey of the residents of the area on how to best serve them. During this time of social distancing and online services, please know that church expenses continue. Therefore, we very much appreciate your continuing to pay your pledge or offer your donation by mailing a check to the church office or by using PayPal or Venmo. Our Venmo account is at UUCBHAM. Please designate whether your donation is for UUCB or for PANIC. Thank you for your generous support of our church and our Share the Plate recipient. May we give in love and in hope.
As we enter our meditative space, we lift up Marilyn Carrata and her family over the loss of her father this week. Please reach out and offer your love and condolences to Marilyn, Bob, and their family. We also lift up Virginia Volker, who spent some time in the hospital this week. We celebrate that she is home recovering, but we invite you to reach out to her and offer your love and support as she recovers. We also celebrate that Chris Gray's brother, Jeremy Gray, is home from the hospital and is recovering at home now. We continue to lift up the Gray family in his recovery. Using the chat feature in YouTube, by speaking it aloud, or by hearing it on your heart, please give voice to what is on your heart today. Please take a moment to hear a spoken meditation followed by a moment of silence. Today's meditation is adapted from the words of Jennifer Willett. Take a moment and reflect. What comes to mind for you when you think about Labor Day? Chances are you think of the holiday weekend and of celebrations with family and friends, although likely less so this year, the federal holiday, unions, and the cause of a working wage and benefits, maybe the history of the struggle of working people to have a fair share of the profits from their work. Those are all great things. Now I want you to think of your parents and caregivers, the folks that fed you, bathed you, nurtured you, and taught the building blocks for you of how to be in the world. Now think of your elders, who shops for them, goes to the doctor with them, cleans for them, and cares for them as they age. Now think of those who have physical and mental challenges of differing degrees. They come in all ages and for a variety of reasons. Who assists them in the daily tasks that makes day-to-day life easier and sometimes possible at all? Much of this work is unpaid labor. Yet the work of homemaking, childcare, elder care, and care for those with disabilities isn't a part of our economic system. It doesn't count on our gross domestic product, but our society would collapse without it. Now, consider the other non-paid labor we do to mentor, to educate, to assist, to advocate, to entertain and enrich the community, the country, and the world. Think of all that we do for our neighbors, our friends, our community, to make life better. This is also labor. A paycheck isn't the only measure of a lonelier and more desperate place. Honor your labor. If you work for money, this holiday is for you. If you work for love, this holiday is still for you. Our work makes the world better. Enjoy your day. Blessed be.
This folktale comes from the Edo people of Nigeria. In the 13th century, the Edo founded the Kingdom of Benin deep in the West African rainforest. The kingdom was well known for its arts. Artisans and craftspeople fashioned terracotta sculptures, bronze statues, and wooden masks. Musicians and storytellers enthralled and entertained. In the evening, people would gather to listen to the storytellers' tales. Like many African myths, this tale tells how humans once lived closer and in harmony with nature. It also shows how our actions have the power to create or destroy this balance. The story is hundreds of years old, yet it offers a timely reminder to consume less and conserve more. Will the children please come forward? This morning I will be telling you a folktale from Nigeria. Like many African myths, this tale tells how humans once lived closer and in harmony with nature. It also shows how our actions have the power to create or destroy this balance. This story is hundreds of years old. It offers a timely reminder to consume less and conserve more. As Gandhi said, the earth can provide for every man's need, but not every man's greed. Without meaning to, we often take more than we need. About 1/4 of the food that we buy ends up being thrown in the trash. Production, transportation, and storage use lots of energy, water, and packaging, which is still wasted if the food is thrown away. At the moment, most of our edible waste is sent to landfill sites, where gives off harmful greenhouse gases that contribute to climate change and pollution. If we stop wasting food that could be eaten, we could feed 80 million people per day. In the beginning, the sky was close to the earth, so close you could reach up and touch it, and you could eat it. In those days, people always had enough to eat, without ever having to work for it. Men and women did not have to plow the fields and sow the seeds and gather crops. Children did not have to fetch sticks for fire. Whenever anyone was hungry, they just reached up and tore off a piece of sky. But people grew careless with the sky's gifts. They broke off more than they needed. Who cared about a little wasted sky? But the sky cared. Soon the sky's sorrow turned to resentment, and its resentment grew to anger. I offer myself every day to these people, the sky brooded, and they throw me away, half-eaten, like garbage. People of the earth. The sky's eyes flashed like lightning. Clouds bubbled and boiled. You have not treated me with respect. You have wasted my gifts. Trembling, the people looked up. I warn you, if you are greedy, I will leave. I will move far away. With lowered eyes, the people listened. On bended knee, they promised to be more careful. And after that, no one broke off more than they could eat, and they always remembered to thank the sky. But then a time came for a greatest festival of the year, in honor of the chief of the kingdom. The night rang with music. Bells clanged and drums banged. People stamped and clapped. The tables heaved with dishes of specially prepared sky. There was plenty for everyone, for the sky was generous. It trusted people to take only what they needed. But there was one woman who was never satisfied. Osata always wanted more. And most of all, she loved to eat. First, she helped herself to a handful of noon yellow sky. Sticky, sweet pineapple. Then she ladled out some sky stew, spicy and warm. She lifted the dish to her lips, draining it, dumplings and all. Soon her stomach was stuffed. At last the tables were empty, and Osato was full. She waddled home. Her robe stretched and strained across her stomach. She was full to the bursting, but she kept wandering upward toward the sky, wondering, what does it taste like now? Her fingers began to pull out her spoon, the one she kept tucked in her headscarf, just in case. She stopped herself just in time, because Osato knew that the sky offered itself only because no one ever took more than they needed. But oh, how she wanted some. She stared up, drooling. The sky was frothy with white clouds. It's so huge. Shouldn't hurt to take a little more. And she pulled out her sponge and plunged in. She savored a mouthful of sky and another. She stared up, drooling. The sky was frothy white with clouds. The sky is so huge, Osato told herself. It can't hurt to have just a little more. She pulled out her spoon and plunged it in. She savored a mouthful of sky and another. It tasted of golden pawpaw and coconut milk. It melted on her tongue. She closed her eyes. Oh, it tasted like a floating in the clouds. She drew down her spoon and scooped with her hands, sucking the delicious sky from her fingertips. Finally, without another thought, Osato pulled down a great slab of sky, enough to feed a family for weeks. She licked all around the edges, chewing more slowly now. She stared up at the huge hole above her. She stared down at the enormous mound of sky, and she knew that she had taken more than even she could eat. Above her head there were rumblings. What have I done? Osato grasped. I cannot waste this sky. What shall I do? Husband, she shrieked, come eat this sky. But her husband had been feasting too, and was slumped in his chair, wafting himself with the fan. I can't even move, let alone eat. Still, he managed a few mouthfuls. Children, screeched Osato. Out ran Osato's children, chattering and giggling. They prodded the heap of sticky sky and screwed up their faces. Still, they forced down a few fingerfuls. Neighbors, please, screamed Osato. Help me finish this sky. Her neighbors had been at the festival, too. At the sight of more food, they held their stomachs and groaned. But they ate as much as they could, with worried frowns on their faces and anxious glances above their heads. But even with the help of the entire village, they could not eat that last piece of sky. Osato had taken too much. What does it matter, Osato told herself at last. Just a bit of waste. But the feeling in the pit of her stomach told her otherwise. No one slept well that night. Osato lay staring in the darkness. The next morning, the sky did not offer food to the people. Parents had nothing for breakfast. Children cried, hungry. Osato knelt on the ground, rocking and sobbing. I am so sorry. Finally, without another thought, Osato pulled down a great slab of sky, enough to feed a family for weeks. She licked around the edges, chewing more slowly, and she stared at the huge hole above her. And she knew she had taken more than she could eat. What have I done? I cannot waste this sky. Husband, come eat this sky. But her husband had been feasting too, and was slumped in his chair. I can't even move, let alone eat. Still, he managed a few mouthfuls. Children chattering and giggling, and they prodded the heap of sticky sky, screwed up their faces, and forced down a few fingerfuls. Neighbors, please, help me finish this sky. But they had been at the festival too, and at the sight of more food, they held their stomachs and groaned. But they ate what they could. Worried frowns on their faces and anxious glances above their head. But even with the help of the entire village, they could not eat that last piece of sky. Osato had taken too much. What does it matter, she told herself. Just a bit of waste. The next morning the sky did not offer his food to the people. Parents had nothing for breakfast, and children cried hungry. Osato knelt on the ground, rocking and sobbing. I'm so sorry. But the sky just sighed. With a great rush of air, it lifted itself up, high as the treetops. I am so sorry, wept Osato. High as the mountain tops. I am so sorry. High above the earth rose the sky, far beyond the reach of humans. I gave you all you needed. Its voice floated down to Osato. But still you took more. I cannot stand such greed. I must leave. I will not return. But how will we live, wept Osato. What will we eat? There was silence. Osato's tears fell to the earth, and the earth spoke. Dry your tears, it said gently. I can feed you. But you will have to work for your living. You will have to learn how to plow fields, sow seeds, and harvest crops. And remember what you have learned today. Take only what you need, and I will give it to you gladly. Oh, I will, promised Osato through her tears. I'll never take more than I need. Never, ever again. Osato kept her word. She respected the sky and the earth, and she shared her story with everyone around her. And now I share it with you.
So remember, the next time you think about taking more than you need, that we waste so much food that we could feed everyone. Think about that every time we go to use our resources and how important they are. and how much they can help other people. Thank you for joining me this morning. Please join me in singing our song.
And now let's sing our principal song together. One, each person is worthwhile, to be kind in all you do. 3, we help each other learn. 4, and search for what is true. 5, all people get a vote. 6, build a just and peaceful world. 7, we take care of the earth. That will bring us back to me and you too.
Once upon a time, I taught high school social studies. I worked really hard to make my lessons intriguing and entertaining, unlike many of the history lessons I experienced in high school. One of my favorite introductory lessons was introducing the Industrial Revolution. Picture it. The students' desks have been moved into 4 parallel lines. Each student picks a seat as they enter the room. On one side of the line is a stack of SpongeBob coloring sheets, and each student is given 1 color crayon. There is a template at the front of the room, and depending on which color you've been assigned is the part of the picture you are required to fill in on the sheet. Those who picked yellow obviously groaned first. While explaining the objectives, I would have the inevitable question. So really, we are going to color all hour? Yes, I would respond, and they would gleefully and joyfully sit down to work. After 10 minutes or so, they would start to ask how long they had to keep coloring. And that is when, pre-planned, some of their peers stood up, walked to the end of the lines, and began encouraging them to work faster. As the minutes ticked by, the grumbles became louder and louder. Finally, they were allowed to stop after a grueling 30 minutes or so, and they rubbed their wrists and they would always offer suggestions. Perhaps I could just mix up the tasks a little bit, or allow them to take breaks, or work in shifts. And I would always proclaim, students, this is what labor looked like during the Industrial Revolution in the northern states. Except the workers were often younger than you and lived where they worked. They slept 4 to a bed. They often performed the same menial task over and over again for 12 to 16 hours a day. Their lives were short and bitter. Needless to say, the point was made, and we would launch into lessons involving Upton Sinclair's The Jungle, the power of political cartoons, and the importance of labor unions. After elaborating on the plight of the poor workers in the North who were treated brutally, I would remind the students of the plight of those enslaved in the South who were treated so much worse. When we talk about Labor Day, this is often where the story begins and ends for us. The factories were horrible, the unions made everything better, and now we treat workers well. Labor Day for many is a reminder of how bad it once was. But the story didn't begin there. The first recorded worker strike on American soil was in 1768, when tailors protested a reduction in wages. We were striking before we were even a country. By 1794, the shoemakers in Philadelphia created the first trade union. So no, the labor union didn't start in the early 1900s, and reforms struggled to take hold. So why is it so deeply ingrained for us that the labor movement began in the early 1900s? Because, as newspaper editor Tess Flanders wrote in 1911, a picture is worth 1,000 words. Because it was a picture of Peter, an enslaved man who escaped a plantation and allowed Union doctors to take pictures of his scars that drastically increased Northern sympathies for the plight of enslaved persons in the South. Out of respect and not to traumatize folks in our congregation, I will invite you to look up that image on Google if you wish, but I will not be sharing it here. Because photographers and journalists like Lewis Hine showed us what life was like for those working children and printed their faces in the newspaper, in honor of their labor, allow me to show you some of their photos. This first photo is a young shrimp picker named Manuel, taken in 1912. This photo is from Louisiana and shows Rosie, an 8-year-old oyster shucker. She worked from 3 a.m. to 5 p.m. every day, and she told him that the baby pictured in the photo would start shucking as soon as she could hold the knife. Lewis Hine took that photo in 1911. This young worker, Hiram Polk, is 9 years old, and he worked at a canning company. He told Hine, "I ain't very fast, only about 5 boxes a day. They pay 5 cents a box." Adjusting for inflation, Hiram would earn $6 a day. Katie, age 13, Angeline, age 11. Here they are hand stitching Irish lace to go on the ends of cuffs. Their income is $1 a week. We often see this image of young boys working in the coal mines. They worked as breaker boys. But I wanted to show you, here is them actually at work, with the coal rushing underneath their feet from where they are seated. They separate the impurities by hand, at great risk to limb and life, and many of them lost much. After seeing the faces of these children in print, sympathies grew, and the movement for labor protections escalated. Congress tried to address child labor in 1916 by passing the Keatings-Owens Act, an act that was quickly deemed unconstitutional by the Supreme Court. 21 years passed, long enough that all of the children in these photos were now adults, if they made it that far. In 1938, the Fair Labor Standards Act passed and banned children under 16 in most factories and created better working conditions for many laborers. The power of the press, the power of photography to shape American consciousness. For the last 3 weeks, we have explored our UU principles, the values around which we govern our churches. Our fourth principle is this: we, the Unitarian Universalist congregations, affirm and promote a free and responsible search for truth and meaning. I don't know whether Lewis Hine was a Unitarian or a Universalist, but I know he went to great lengths to expose child labor in the United States, and that he died poor and on welfare because his advocacy made him many enemies. Hine promoted a free and responsible search for truth and meaning, one that led to the better treatment of child workers in America. It's the year 2020, over 100 years since Louis Hine took those photos, and our treatment of workers leaves much to be desired. In the years since the Fair Labor Standards Act, we've created documents such as non-disclosure agreements and employment at will laws to treat employees like replaceable cogs in a machine who are silenced by their exit from employment. We've required longer hours, fewer vacations, less time off. Don't get me started on the joke that is PTO, or paid time off. And the Supreme Court allows employers to determine our health care. We've made it really challenging for workers to be in a union, and many states have stripped the power of the unions. We continue to fail to provide safe working conditions for employees. Listen to the coal workers from West Virginia on that NPR special who are dying from black lung, or the Amazon employees who keep an empty soda bottle on the floor because they are not given time to go to the bathroom. Blizzard Entertainment, a company close to my heart, a company worth $14 billion, came under fire recently because employees reported using the free coffee at work to suppress their appetites because they could not afford both rent and food. The CEO took home a salary of $40 million. These stories only scratch the surface. We're not even including the labor used by the prison industry, or by immigrants, or by human trafficking. We have not yet stopped the tide of child labor, but we have succeeded by shipping it overseas and by putting distance between ourselves and the children exploited for our chocolate, our clothes, our shoes, our soap, our sugar, our carpets, our diamonds and gold, and so much more. So many of our products are created by the hands of children. Part of our free and responsible search for truth and meaning involves making good choices for purchasing when we can afford to do so. Another part of our free and responsible search for truth and meaning is the other thread moving through this Labor Day sermon: the power of the press. We are in unprecedented times when media is vilified, whistleblowers' reputations are sullied, and groups of people are actively working to dilute the truth. We have an obligation to ourselves and those around us, and those who most suffer from these untruths, to protect our sources of input, to carefully examine what we are reading and hearing, and to share only what we have verified. And when we make mistakes, to correct those as best we can. Today, our press also has the power of video, which brings unprecedented analysis and access to the public. Consider the video of the brutalization of Rodney King, a 25-year-old black man, at the hands of 15 LAPD officers. The media in 1991 were horrified. Even the police chief spoke about instantly filing felony charges against the officers involved, although he was later pushed out because of systemic issues. We had a public understanding in 1991 that this behavior by police officers was immoral and wrong. And yet today, we can all watch the same video of George Floyd or Ahmaud Arbery or Jacob Blake and all come to vastly different conclusions. Conclusions fueled by media empires which are no longer in pursuit of the truth, but rooted in propaganda, fear, and divisiveness. And then there's QAnon, a group that emerged in 2017, and for those of us who noticed, we hoped it would just disappear if we ignored it. But like a tooth ravaged by a cavity until it has rotted and needs to be pulled, the QAnon rot has grown and remained unpulled, affecting the rest of our collective voice, much like the cavity which affects the rest of the mouth. QAnon alleges that a cabal of Satan-worshipping pedophiles running a global child sex trafficking ring is plotting against President Donald Trump, who is battling them. QAnon has also been involved in acts of violence and domestic terrorism and is on the FBI's watch list. Just this week, QAnon put out information that only 6% of COVID deaths are actually due to COVID, per the CDC statistics. However, they must not be aware that in many states, doctors are required to put more than one cause of death on a death certificate for the death certificate to be valid. Their conclusion is based in misunderstanding, twisting lies. Thankfully, for once, Facebook, Twitter, YouTube, Reddit, and others are committed to taking down QAnon-related posts, but there is only so much the algorithm can do, especially when the president retweets QAnon posts himself. 10 QAnon supporters are currently in elections running for national office. We as UUs have an obligation to process the media, to explore sites we know and trust, to use Snopes.com and PolitiFact.com liberally, and to call out folks we see on social media sharing untruths. Fact check. If you aren't on social media, it's still important to be aware of these issues because they will come up in conversations with others. After all, it is one of our values to search for truth and meaning responsibly. On this Labor Day, let us acknowledge how far we have come and how far we have yet to go. Let us recognize all who labor and appreciate that all labor matters in the chain of production. Let us recognize those who do not, cannot, or have stopped laboring, for our value is beyond what we are able to produce. Let us celebrate those organizers and those who treat their employees humanely and with care. Let us recognize the whistleblowers, the boycotts, the protests, the walkouts, and the strikes as effective means to organize labor and advocate for a better world for all. Let us remember the children and work to end child labor around the world. Let us recognize the journalists and photographers without whom the truth is concealed and reality is distorted. May we search for truth and meaning in free and responsible ways in our roles as employees, employers, consumers, and producers. May it be so. May you be held in the heart of community until we are joyfully reunited in person. Blessed be.
please join us in our closing hymn found in your order of service.
Give thanks for the corn and the wheat that are reaped, for labor well done and for bonds that are heaped, for the sun and the dew and the sweet honeycomb, for the rose and the song and the harvest brought home. Give thanks for the mills and the farms of our land, for craft and the strength in the work of our hands, for the beauty our artists and poets have wrought, for the hope and affection our friendships have brought. Give thanks for the homes that with kindness are blessed, for seasons of plenty and well-deserved rest, for our country extending from sea unto sea, for ways that have made it a land for the free.
We leave this space of kindness and comfort. May rough, worn hands and aching backs be healed. We leave this space of hope for equality. May those who labor to survive live to know justice. We leave this space of love and vocation. May our bonds of solidarity be strengthened. We leave this space of courage and friendship. May we proceed hand in hand toward freedom.